Greetings everyone, Brad here with Mild Mannered EDC. And today we're going to do a classic Mild Mannered review of this new offering from a relatively new company, well, very new company I guess, Kunwu, or Kunwu. And this particular knife is the Kunwu Orion, and it's really interesting. So it was something offered through Kickstarter that was a successful activity, a successful project, and so it's now gone into mainstream production and hit the markets. So with that, I thought I wanted to get underway and give you kind of my take on the Kunwu. I actually, as it turns out, was a Kickstarter backer, so you'll see that first production label there. I was 139 out of 262, but you'll see that on this particular blade. That won't obviously be on other knives, but yeah, so there you go. So let's go ahead and get underway with this review, and we'll start with a spec check of this Kunwu Orion. We've got a blade of 3.54 inches, a handle of 4.72 inches, a blade thickness of, I think, 0.12 inches, and an overall tip to tail of 8.26 inches with a weight of 4.51 ounces. So there you go. Not too heavy for a knife this substantial, and it is a pretty good sized knife, but we'll go ahead and get into that. So let's do a couple comparisons here. So we've got a rat number 1 and a Benchmade bug out. So there you go, you can see that. How about a Swiss Army knife, standard Swiss Army knife, and our Mild Mannered Best Tech Swordfish. So there you go. Those are the comparisons there. So pretty decent sized knife, and one that's pretty darn well made. So with a classic review, you know, we talk blade, we talk action, we talk scales and hardware, and then we talk carry and ergonomics, etc. So let's go ahead and get underway and start with the blade on this Kunwu Orion. So we've got a S35 VN blade. There we go. And I think it's important to mention that for one of the things that this so Sergio, who's the point of contact that I've had at Kunwu, he's a great guy, really interesting, really a lot of energy and great knowledge about sort of the knife industry and sort of the aspirations he has for Kunwu. But one of the things he mentioned to me was they're really trying to focus on, for the steels that they use, really trying to maximize their potential by doing as good a heat treat and other processes as possible to really maximize what you get out of that. And so this actually has got a 62 or so on the Rockwell scale of steel hardness. So really, you know, kind of maximizing that S35 VN. So yeah, you've got a classic drop point blade. I actually think this is a really traditional looking blade. It's very handsome, I think, with this sort of machine satin finish and a flat grind. And I think it's also important to note that there are other videos out kind of floating around out on YouTube of one of the earlier prototypes of this knife that Kunwu had provided. It has a couple of slight differences. One, there was some, the Kunwu name and logo were sort of right here on those knives, much bigger. They heard feedback from folks, and I agreed with that feedback that, you know, too much billboarding, put it up here, just take your cool, and I actually like the logo, I think it's pretty cool, and put it up there and call it a day. In the back, or on the clip side rather, the back, this is the back of the knife, you know, you've got the blade steel marking up here, you've got Orion. The Orion doesn't bother me, one, because I think it's a cool name, and two, I think it's just, I like the font, it's done well. K701, you know, I could take it or leave it. That's just the model number. That could have been put down here or something like that. And again, you've got the markings from the Kickstarter backer information. And also interesting to note that was actually at request of Sergio had talked to us backers and asked if we wanted that. A majority of us said yes, and so we went ahead and did that. So another example of kind of trying to listen to the customers, which I thought was pretty cool. But again, won't be on a knife that you go pick up at their website, but you will get this sort of the updated version with just the K there, etc. Nice little bit of jimping up here, not aggressive, but pretty well done, perfectly comfortable. Beautiful swedge, beautiful swedge. Now, the one thing I will say about this knife, and I think this is an accurate statement for that I'm about to make for me, anyways. This was one of the, if not the most well sharpened knives that I've ever received. This thing is crazy sharp. It's not going to show up on camera, unfortunately. You can't really see it, but the grind is perfectly symmetrical on both sides. It's crazy sharp. I mean, crazy sharp. And I'll put a video up of me cutting through some boat rope and, maybe anything else I had in the garage at the time. I don't remember what was on that little clip, but it'll be up there. And so, yeah, I mean, just really, really, I know some of it's done by machine, but they're all finished by hand. And, whoever they have doing that over there, or whatever team they've got working on the doing the edges, are really knocking it out of the park. I mean, perfectly done, perfectly executed finger choil there. Yeah, just really, really well done. And for a blade this size, I mean, you got that, plus 3.5 inch blade. It's super slicey, just really well done. So great job to Kunwu on that, especially for their first go. And if that's how they're going to continue to do their blades, a lot to look forward to there. So let's talk action. So for action, yeah, it's got a really, really good action. It's got a great action. Let's just call it a great action, because it is. This, it's really fidgety. I've been playing with it since I got it. I remember Sergio had mentioned to me that he's like, yeah, we really worked hard to dial in that detent, and it's obviously not coming out by being, by shaking it, and it just flies right out of there locks up like a bank vault. So it's got a really, really good action. And you can see, speaking of lockup, so you've got a lockup right there about 50%. Beautiful. It's a frame lock, obviously. You've got a steel insert, lock bar insert, and over travel stop. All good things. But yeah, this action, I mean, so it rides on cage ceramic ball bearings, But again, I mean, so, they really did a nice job with the blade. They've done a really nice job here with this action. So far, so good from Kunwu on their kind of first offering here on the Orion. So, yeah, great action. Super fun to play with and do the things that those of us in the knife hobby like to do. So, yeah, great action. Let's talk scales and material, if this will focus for me. There you go. So we've got beautifully milled titanium. You can see the grind lines there. Everything is really well done as far as chamfering. There's a nice landing pad milled out here on the top of the scales there. So when your finger lands, it lands in this comfortable spot. Yeah, just no complaints there at all. I will say they seem to they countersunk all the screws and all those. It's all stainless steel hardware. I mean, they show up a little bit there, but that's because of the nature of sort of the contouring of the scales. So yeah, I mean, really, really nice work on the titanium here. And in fact, the titanium actually has a slight, I don't know if you can see that, a slight orange peel effect to it. It's very subtle. And orange peel in production knives is actually pretty uncommon. That's much more common in mid-tech or custom, but they've done it here, which is pretty compelling. The only other knife I have that has that orange peel texture is this Spyderco Advocate. And even there you can see, it's much more pronounced on the Advocate, right? It's much more muted here on the Orion, but it adds a really interesting kind of feeling and texture, and with it being so muted, like I said, I just think it's a really nice effect, and I think really is a subtle something that sort of helps this knife set itself apart from other knives out there. So it's great. One of the other things that's pretty unique is this carbon fiber pivot collar inlay thing they've got going on here. Now it is all real carbon fiber, lightning strike, with those red accents. It doesn't come in different colors or anything like that, but done really well. The fitment is done very well. It's seated in there beautifully, very smooth transitions. It has some very mild imperfections. You can see that just right around the pivot there, where maybe wasn't the cleanest of cuts that they put in there, but that's pretty, I mean, you really have to be looking to pay attention to that. And frankly, that's really the first and only kind of fit and finish foul. And even that's probably too harsh a language, honestly. That's about as, it's about one of the worst things I can say about this knife. And it really isn't that bad. And you really can't even tell unless you're paying attention and looking right at it. So, it is what it is, but doesn't bother me, but it's there. So I want to make sure and point it out to you all. And I don't know that it would be there on every single knife, but it is on mine just a little bit. The other thing to notice is this blue anodized back spacer. Now I like it. It's a floating back spacer, which is cool. So you get that sort of see-through effect there. It's obviously got this kind of interesting lanyard hole design that kind of fits so that you can see how they sort of carved out the titanium there. And yeah, it's just interesting and well done. There is a chorus of reviewers out there, and I think I probably joined them. It's like, why is this blue and this red? And then you got the titania. I mean, it seems a little all over the place. I guess I can agree with that. I mean, had this been red, or maybe they had made this blue carbon fiber or whatever. Okay, I get that. You could always sort of re-anodize this to something you like, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't. I mean, my little OCD self, I mean, this sort of bothers me, but not to an extreme level. So I think it's really well done, and so I'm kind of giving it a pass, I think, on that. So there you go. That's the other thing I wanted to mention, handle and scales.
Just one more thing.
See if I can get this going here. Some substantial milling out of the titanium inside. Yeah, you can see that pretty well in there. Really went to a lot of effort, I think, to minimize the weight on this as much as they could for being, a pretty good sized knife. Yeah. So, anyways, I thought that was pretty cool. So there you go. Let's talk carry and ergonomics. So ergonomics, very comfortable in my hand. No real hot spots to speak of. Like I said, my hand kind of lands right there pretty comfortably. I suppose you could, do a reverse grip or, whatever else, but just this traditional grip, feels very good. No, like I said, not a single sharp spot anywhere. This titanium pocket clip, I think is actually really, really well done. It's got some, similar, milling to kind of match the milling of the rest of the, scales, which I think is great. Not the most deep carry. We'll throw this up there. Beautiful Hank, by the way, gifted to me by Big Red EDC. Go make sure you're checking out his channel. Obviously put together by Shadowborn Hanks. So yeah, I mean, but not the deepest carry ever. But I've talked about this before on some level. I like a deep carry. I prefer to carry deep carry. Sometimes, though, the design of the knife just makes that a little challenging, and to keep it looking good, they're sort of forced to do as best they can with the clip, and I think they did it pretty reasonably, and I would have bigger complaints if this wasn't a good clip or if it didn't carry well, but none of those things are accurate, so it's not a complaint for me at all, and I like the look of it, so I kind of prefer it is the way it is. And so that brings us to the carry piece. This, for a big knife, it carries really surprisingly well. It kind of compacts down You know, you can almost hide it completely behind this rat one, which is another pretty hefty knife. So yeah, I mean, it carries beautifully. I loved having it in the pocket. It was, no fouls there, no worry about, blade being exposed anywhere or the tip or any of those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, it carried surprisingly well. I was surprised at how well it sort of carried itself in the pocket. A little bit of a flipper tab here, but nothing too dramatic. In fact, I think it's probably a pretty modest one when you consider the size of the blade that it's, flinging out there. So there you go. We've talked all those components. Last couple little comments. One of the things that Sergio did mention to me is that as they're moving forward with additional knives, and they have some really interesting things in the pipeline, including a Kickstarter that I think they're planning to get up and running pretty soon on another knife called the Ronin. I'll put a picture up of that. Looks really compelling, and I think I probably will be in on that Kickstarter because I really enjoyed being a part of this process, and it's a company I like, and I think I want to try to be supportive of as they go forward. But yeah, I mean, what I paid on Kickstarter about $100 for this knife, maybe just a little bit over. That's a phenomenal value. I mean, kind of an insane value. I told Sergio, I said, when I got this in the mail finally, I was like, whoa, I think I might have ripped you off. And we were kind of joking. I mean, the value is really intense here. And if you buy them on their website now, and they do have them available, these are about $140. And I still think that's a pretty darn good value. And one of the things they said, Kunwu, one of the things Kunwu is really going to try to push as its niche in the market is really trying to put as high quality materials together with great execution at really as low a price as they can make happen. And I think that's really compelling, as we've seen Chinese makers continue to, amp their prices up and up and up. Not talking about anybody in specific, but yeah, I mean, we've seen makers that are doing that, and they're putting out good products. It's not to say that they're not putting out good products, but that envelope keeps going up and up. And in fact, there are others out there too. But no, I mean, it's really good to see another company try to do that. We'll see if they can, if something they can sustain, but either way, it's a good aspiration. So there you go. I'm really pleased with this knife. I think it's a fantastic first offering from this company. Really excited to see what they can do down the road and what their products will look like going forward. I'm definitely going to be a supporter, and if you're interested in this kind of knife, or if this looks good to you, or like a knife you'd want to own or collect, I say go for it. You can't really go wrong. Another note that this is going to be a staple model for them, so any of the parts that come in this knife are replaceable. It is a long-term product for them. They're not just doing a one and done sort of thing. So when it sells out, it sells out. I mean, I think they're going to try to do other improvising on maybe some different blade steels, doing some other little pieces in this going forward. So yeah, I mean, that's another nice thing to know, that you're not just buying something that, can never really be worked on, or if there's an issue, you're not going to be able to deal with that going forward. So there you go. So really nicely done. Kunwu, the whole team over there, very well done. Sergio, thanks for being so great to chat with and talk to. Been really fantastic. I look forward to what the energy you're kind of bringing to all this, and what Kunwu is going to be putting out in the future. So with that, stay safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another, especially now with everything going on the way it is. And all the best.